So I wanted to do a video on how you start camping. What are the basics? What do you really need? What do you not need? So I took a look at my gear yesterday, and there's not a single thing that I haven't changed in less than a year of wild camping. And that's nuts. Now, some things, tent, really obvious, sleeping systems, really obvious. But some of the small stuff, I have changed time and time again. Cooking equipment, stoves, go from gas to alcohol, all those sort of things. So if you're a beginner, how do you start? You've got to get past that fear of going out on a solo wild camp. How do you do that? What's the minimum amount of gear you can take? Where do you go? How do you choose a site? How do you practice to carry all of your equipment? How do you practice to use your equipment? If you haven't got a garden, how do you know how to set up a tent? All of these things are complicated and not complicated. And all of these things, if you start wild camping, any form of camping really, you will change over time. And that's what this is about. And I want to go from the ground up. So where do we start? Well, in a totally predictable move, I've managed to tip a whole load of cider inside the tent. I knew that was going to happen. I didn't engage my brain. It's guaranteed to topple over. The law of sod says so. Lesson number 1. Let's start with the tent. Actually, lesson number 1 is anything that can go wrong will go wrong eventually. Because when I say tent, I don't actually mean tent. I didn't start with a tent. I mean, I could have done. There are cheap enough tents out there. What I started with was a snug pack stratosphere bivvy bag and a tarp. And it's not an awful place to start unless you've never wild camped. If you've never wild camped, don't start with a bivvy. Start with a cheap tent, second-hand tent, any tent. Don't go bivvy camping on your first outing. I used to camp a lot, so I thought, right, bivvy, that's the way to do it. Nice and stealthy, nice and quiet. Unfortunately, I'm about double the size that I used to be when I was camping as a teenager in early 20s. So, although the snug pack bivvy was great, and I could sleep in it, sort of, it was not very comfortable. I'm not saying it was a wetsuit, but it wasn't far from it. Anyway, that did give me the bug though. I'll show some photos, including the smiley photo of me. And I've still got the tarp. In fact, actually, you know what? The tarp is the only thing I haven't changed. I haven't actually brought it with me today, but that is the only thing that I haven't changed. Interesting. Anyway, tents. You don't have to have huge tents. In fact, don't get a massive 4-man inflatable thing. They might be nice and cheap on eBay, but there's a reason for that. Probably if you first time, don't get a 1-man tent. Get a 2-man tent. Have some room, spread out. You're going to do that later anyway. you've got to go through the routine first. We all do it. Anyway, so after the Stratosphere bivvy, which I used a couple of times, and I still have obviously, I then picked up a Fox 2 V2 from OEX Go Outdoors. Great little tent, but when I say little I mean it. Again, I am slightly rotund. I don't really fit into those tiny little one-man or one-plus tents. I can. I sleep okay. They're okay. They're nice tents. The Fox 2 is a brilliant little tent. It's just not comfy. But it's great for stealth camping. It's in the car, just in case. I might actually leave it in the car, because it's a great emergency shelter. So, if you've never been wild camping before, have a look on eBay. Have a look on Marketplace if you want to. I don't get things from Marketplace. I don't really trust it much. eBay is fine. eBay gives you protection. PayPal gives you protection. You have nothing on Marketplace. It's okay if you're spending a couple of quid, but if you're spending a couple of £100, don't use Facebook. Anyway, have a look on eBay. See what you can find. Doesn't have to be anything new. Doesn't have to be anything, big branded. You're not looking to go out and buy a Hilleberg off the bat. Or ever. Have a look for the OEX stuff. It's from Go Outdoors. You can go and buy new, and if you're a member at Go Outdoors, it's pretty cheap, to be honest. I think my Fox 2 was 60 quid, something like that. But they do a whole range of different types and sizes. From the stealth, low to the ground type Fox, a Jackal, which is sort of it's a small tunnel tent, and upwards from there. And there's a lot of cheap ones. You've also got, your Euro hikes and your some of the Chinese brands, the nature hike ones. All of those are pretty fine tents for knocking about with. Depends on what you want to do. And if you're just starting beginner camping, you won't know yet. So have a look around, see what you can find. Just because a tent is 10 years old doesn't mean to say it's any good. It's rubbish. Doesn't mean it's any good either. You do sort of take your chance with eBay. I've had some good buys with eBay and some really terrible ones. If you've seen the video with the Amiga 250, that's an eBay. Lovely tent. Nice and big. But the Tempest, which is the smaller one, just didn't repel water at all. And it was a 15-year-old tent, so I'm not hugely surprised. And that's, you pay 50 quid, that's what you get. Nothing wrong with that. It worked for a couple of times out. More importantly, it informed me what I wanted and what I didn't want. And what I didn't want was really small tents. What I quite liked was having a lot of room, or at least enough room. I'm not looking for a palace, but enough room so that all of your equipment comes inside with you, at least in the vestibule with you at night, rather than having to dry bag it or put a tarp around everything and leave it outside, which you sort of have to do with the Fox and other ones of that size. So that's where I went from the Tempest to the Amiga. The Amiga's a nice big tent. The vestibule is huge, and you can actually set up in there, and that's a bonus. It really, really is. And that worked for months. Like I say, I've been wild camping back this time round, at least, was June last year, June the 14th last year. So not long, 10 months. And I think I've evolved quite quickly through that process. don't know how many camps that is. 12, 15 maybe, something like that. Maybe a few more, maybe a few less. But all these camps, every single time I go out, it helps me, it informs me, tells me what I like and what I don't like, what I don't need to bring, what I should have brought, what I've got that's good and what I've got that's rubbish and needs to be replaced. And that's what it's about. Constantly evolving. So start off easy. Start off with an eBay special. Will you get wet? 50-50? Probably not. Would it be the most comfortable thing ever? Probably not, depending on some of the other things we'll talk about. Will it do until you've got the bug and you know what else you want, where you want to go? Absolutely. Do that. So your shelter's sorted one way or another. Then what? Well, the next one of the big three, I've got hair in my eye. Hang on. The next one, of what we call the big three, is your sleep system. What are you going to sleep in? What are you going to sleep on?